The purpose of this article is to show why Japan's GDP shrank in the first quarter of 2018 and why it is a repeating pattern, and also why it is not a systemic problem that an investor should be concerned about. The chart below shows the latest GDP result that is making headlines in the business section of newspapers and websites across the world. A balance of sectoral flows model was used after the work of British economist Professor Wynne Godley to carry out the assessment. In 1970, Professor Wynne Godley moved to Cambridge, where, with Francis Cripps, he founded the Cambridge Economic Policy Group (CEPG). In early 1974, after playing around with concepts devised in conversation with Nicky Kaldor and Robert Neild, Wynne Godley first apprehended the strategic importance of the accounting identity, which says that, measured at current prices, the government's budget balance, less the current account balance, is equal, by definition, to the private sector balance. GDP equals federal spending, non-federal spending, net exports. As a percentage of GDP, all three sectors sum to zero. GDP equals GDI by definition. The stronger the private sector balance is, the stronger the private domestic economy and markets within it. A nation's balance of accounts can be expressed by the following formula. Private sector, P, equals government sector, G, external sector, X, the community, business, and the stock market are located in P. For P to expand, it needs the balance of inputs from G and X to be positive. A negative balance causes P to contract. When one adds all three sectors together, it equals the GDP for that year. One sector's loss is the other's gain, and if they all go down, so does GDP. When one makes a sectoral analysis of Japan, one finds the following. Sectoral balance analysis. The charts below show the key information required to calculate the sectoral balances. One can calculate the private sector balance by adding the current account balance and the government budget as expressing it as a percentage of GDP. As an accounting identity, this must sum to zero overall regarding percentage of GDP. Recent, current and projected annual sector balances are shown in the table below. Private sector, P, external sector, X, government sector, G, 2016 8.2%, 3.7%, 4.5%, 2017 8.52%, 4.02%, 4.5%, 2018. The private sector balance is also reinforced by private credit creation from private banks. One can say that aggregate demand in any period is GDP credit. The chart below shows the private credit trend. Private credit creation adds about 1.5% of GDP to the economy and money supply each year. What this shows is that GDP growth is in no way imperiled and there is no need to panic and exit Japanese stocks. So what did kill GDP growth in the first quarter? The answer is national tax payments. It also affected the stock market. The stock market has recovered strongly from the February 2018 retracement, and is up over halfway to again reach former pre-retracement highs. Japan had a midway low caused by national tax payment. If not withheld by the employer, national income taxes are due in full by March 15. The huge extraction of money out of the economy for national tax payment affects not only GDP growth in that quarter but also stock market performance, as the chart below shows. The chart shows that in Japan, one can expect a stock market dip in the first quarter of each year and then a steady rise into the rest of the year once the negative effect of the tax drainage has been worked off. Similarly, the tax refunds that come in the month and quarter following the tax payments provide a boost to both GDP and the stock market. In Japan, one could say, sell in December and come back in April. A comparison of this taxation drain and net effect for the 6 largest economies in the world can be read here. The national government is the largest single agent in any economy. When the national government drains or adds money to the economy, it makes a big impact that moves both GDP and markets. Given the national government is the issuer of the unit of account, it does not need to obtain it from anyone else. There is no need for the national government to tax to obtain more money, nor does it need to borrow money either. It creates money whenever it spends by marking numbers in bank accounts in the private sector upwards. One would have smoother markets and steadier growth if taxation were abandoned in a modern money economy. To illustrate the point, imagine that the national government declared the unit of account null and void and introduced a new unit of account called the buckaroo. It could not tax in buckaroos as none have been issued by the Treasury to the population that uses the unit of account. Nor can the national government borrow any as none exist to borrow. Taking the analogy further, one could not go to a bank and borrow buckaroos because banks do not yet have a capital base of buckaroos from which to create credit buckaroos. Banks must first have a capital base as a condition of their government-issued banking license. Loans create deposits and generate reserves at the national bank. Banks are capital constrained and not reserve constrained. No capital equals no loan creation. Conclusion, summary, and recommendation. One can see then that the private sector has a strongly positive private sector balance of over 8% of GDP. This is one of the strongest in the world. The negative GDP print and indeed the slow stock market retracement recover, and extra deep dip in March was because of a net extraction of money out of the economy from national taxation. The first quarter weak GDP print and stock market performance is a regular repeating pattern that one can trade each year. This pattern will disappear when the national government stops taxation after it realizes that it now operates a modern money system and has all the money it needs courtesy of its currency creation powers at the national treasury. How many decades must pass before this lesson is learned is unknown. Similarly, if there is a stock market retracement that does not run through March of any given year, one can expect a clean, V-shaped recovery if the background private sector flows are strong. One can keep investing in Japan with some confidence of buoyant market going forward. Disclosure: we have no positions in any stocks mentioned, and no plans to initiate any positions within the next 72 hours. I wrote this article myself, and it expresses my own opinions. I am not receiving compensation for it, other than from Seeking Alpha. I have no business relationship with any company whose stock is mentioned in this article.